Hello. Okay, so the purpose of this video is to basically describe how to identify key features of graphs. Okay, so let's first talk about how to identify intervals of increase and decrease. Okay, so what we have here, as you can see, this function here, generally what you do is you read from left to right, and this part's important here, considering the x values. Okay, so for example, let's just take an example. Let's say on the bottom of the hill here we have Shyla. Okay, so this says, well, the function is going to be increasing on certain intervals. So as Shyla goes up the mountain, so think of this as a hill. So as she's going up the mountain, what we see here is this increasing interval is from -5 until -2. Okay, those of you in period 1 and 2, I think I somehow missed that earlier. So if you wanted to change that in the screenshot that you took, make sure to take note of that. I do apologize. I made that error. Okay. And then what I also see is another interval of increase where the slope is increasing is here, right? So this is where Shyla also will go up the mountain. Okay, so that interval would be from 1 until 3. Okay, it's decreasing, so the function is decreasing here. So this is Shyla again, and let's say she's going down the mountain. Let's say she took let's say she is like on a snowy mountain, and then she's snowboarding down the hill, right? So basically, as you can see, the slope is decreasing. In this case, it's decreasing from the interval, so from here to here. So it goes from 3 until about 4.5. Okay, and that's how this would come here. Okay, and the function stays constant. Well, of course, as you can see here, constant implies a flat slope, and that flat slope would be from -2 until 1. So you can, yeah, so like I said earlier, just go ahead and just imagine yourself on a hill and read from left to right. Okay, but that's generally how you would go and identify those intervals. Okay, let's look at an example so you can kind of get an idea, general feel how this works. Okay, first let's say I wanted to identify the x-intercepts of this graph. So very straightforward. What are the where does it cross the x-axis? These are also called zeros, if you guys remember what those were called. X-intercepts. So right here I see, if I label that point, that's -8, 0. This point here, -5, 0. This point here, 2, 0. And this point here, 4, 0. So I can write all of these, if I want to, right here. Okay, so these all represent points. Okay, x-intercepts in that case. Okay, now let's consider the y-intercepts. Y-intercepts are basically where the graph crosses the y-axis. Okay, so we say here this is the x-axis, this is the y-axis. So it looks like the graph is going to cross here. That coordinate is going to be, looks like 0, 3. So that's our y-intercept, 0, 3. Okay, intervals of increase. Okay, this is what I was mentioning earlier. Okay, so if I were to break this up, right? So this green interval here, this is where, if the example I said was Shyla would be going up the mountain. That would be the interval of increase. Okay, so if we consider the x values for this would be from -7 until -2. So you can see kind of based off the graph. And then we also have another interval of increase right here. Okay, and that other interval of increase, so it starts at the bottom, so it goes from 3 all the way until 5. So you're looking only at the x values. That's kind of what I was mentioning earlier. So actually, hold on, let me just show you that one more time. So this again is Shyla at the bottom of the mountain, and then she's going up. Okay, So now I'm going to just clear some of these things here, and I'm going to write those intervals of increase on the left. Okay, so it's going to be from -7 less than or equal to x less than or equal to -2, and from 3 until 5. Okay, intervals of decrease, that's going to be the opposite. So as you can see here, if I break this up into parts, imagine this is Shyla, right? So she is snowboarding down the mountain. If this was snowboarding, right? So this interval is from -9 until -7. Okay, this here, this is another interval of decrease. So as you can see, if we consider the x values, so she starts way up here, right? So it goes from -2 all the way until it looks like an x value of 3. Okay, so that's how we would identify our intervals of decrease. So let's go ahead and write that on the side as well. Okay, so -9 less than or equal to x less than or equal to -7, and the other one is from -2 less than or equal to x less than or equal to 3. Okay, now let's identify our minimum values. Okay, minimum values here represent low points. Okay, so in other words, where is the low point of this graph? So what I see here is this can represent a low point, and I believe this here can also represent a low point. Minimum values and maximum values, so actually maximum values represent high points, and I'll explain that later. Okay, but generally what you're doing is if you're trying to find minimum or maximum values, you're looking only at the y values. Okay, so in other words, what we have here, I can see that the y value here is at -2, and the other y value here is at -1. So if you wanted to be specific, you could tell me the coordinates, but I'm really just looking for the y value, so -2 and -1. Maximum values represent the high point. So the high point of this graph is going to be way up here. Okay, so I just want you to give me the y value of that coordinate, and it looks like our y value is 6. Okay, so that's how we would identify our maximum value. Okay, domain. Okay, so we went over that recently, right? So domain is restricted. As you can see here, this represents the x values, right? So one way that we can represent that there, as you can see, the restriction on the x values starts at x value of -9, and it goes all the way up until 5. So let's go ahead and write that here. So -9 less than or equal to x less than or equal to 5. Okay, now let's look at our range. Range is going to be the opposite. We're looking at our y values. So you see our y values right here. What I see is that the low point we said earlier was -2, and it looks like the highest it goes is going to be a 6. Okay, so let's put that together. So our range is going to go from -2. It's going to be everything between -2 and 6 for the y's. Okay, intervals where the function is positive. Okay, all right, so I'm going to help you guys out with this one. So I know in class I kind of shaded it a certain way. I started modifying a little bit in other classes, and I think it did help a little bit that I showed it this way instead. So if you're in my period 1, period 2, or period 5, I apologize for not showing this earlier. But intervals where the function is positive, okay? So this represents above the x-axis, right? Above the x-axis. So generally, if I were to color code, all of these things here, so this represents everything that I'm coloring in brown. These are all representing intervals where the function is above the x-axis, and even this small part here. Okay, so what we're doing is we're just looking at the x values. The x values in this case, where this function is positive. Okay, so it looks like it's going to go start x value at -9. It's going to include -9, and then it's only going to go up until -8. Now, I made this mistake in my period 1 and 2. I do apologize for this. So what the reason why it's going to be strictly less than is because I realized if you're asking where the function is above the x-axis or even for negative, it's going to be below. Of 0 is neither negative or positive. So it's not going to include -8. So I do apologize for making that error. Okay, so that's going to be one part. Okay, next what I see is also positive. It's going to be from -5. And it's not going to include that point. So it's going to go -5 less than x less than 2. So just going to be from here to here. And it's also this little region here. Okay, so that little region there is from 4. It's not going to include 4, but it should include 5 because that's the endpoint right there. Okay, that's how you identify how it's positive. Okay, let's look at negative. Okay, so in order to identify where it's negative, this represents where the function is below the x-axis. Okay, so generally what you're doing is I'm just going to shade this in so this kind of help you guys out. These purple regions here represent where it's below the x-axis. So clearly what I see here is from -8 to 5. So as you can see, that's going to be below the x-axis. So I'll write that there. Okay. Oh, -5. I'm sorry, -5. Okay. And then this part here as well. So it looks like from 2 to 4, it looks like. So I'll write that as well. So from 2 until 4. Okay, and all of these inequalities and whatnot, you could also write them in interval notation. That's why I wanted to go over interval notation. So, like, I know it gets tiring just kind of writing all these inequalities, right? So if you wanted to, like this first one, you could write it like this. This next one, you can write it like this. And even this one, you could also write it like this. Okay, so it's a shorthand, but it's a little bit easier to identify, I guess, if you decide to do it that way. But whether you choose one way or the other, I'm not gonna be very picky about that. And that is basically how you would identify from a graph. Okay, we're going to look at another example just so you guys get a little bit more practice. And I'll see you later. Okay, bye. Hello. All right, so let's look at another example. Okay, so for this first one, let's say I had you identify the x-intercepts. So like I showed you before, where does the graph cross the x-axis? Okay, so as I can see here, 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 and here, that is all where the graph is going to cross the x-axis. I'm going to go ahead and color these dots in so you can kind of see what I'm referring to. So -10, 0, -5, 0, 0, 0, and 5, 0. Okay, y-intercepts. Okay, y-intercepts are going to be where it crosses the y-axis. So you can see here, that's where it crosses the y-axis. So it's also going to be 0, 0. So 0, 0 is an x-intercept and a y-intercept. Yeah, it's the origin. Okay. Intervals of increase. Okay, intervals of increase. So I'll help you guys out with this. So again, I think I use Shyla as an example. Right, so this is Shyla here at the bottom of the hill. That's the low point here, and as you come up, that would be the interval of increase. So for example, what I see here, we have from -8 until -2, it looks like, and then we have this here. So if I were to kind of just put this right here, and so this is going up here, and she's going up here. So this, it looks like it's the x values from 0 until 2. Okay, so let's go ahead and write that on the left. Okay, here we go. So -8 less than or equal to x less than or equal to -2. and the other one is from 0 until 2. Okay. Intervals of decrease are going to be the opposite. Okay, like I tried to show you the picture, right? So this is Shyla, and she's snowboarding down the hill, right? So from -10 until -8, that will work. I see another interval of decrease here. Okay, so she's up here, gonna go down the mountain. So from -2, oops, I don't know what happened there, until 0. Okay, and then this one, and she's going down the hill from here. So it looks like it's gonna be 2 until 5. Okay, so that would represent our intervals of decrease. Let's go ahead and write that on the side so we know what we're referring to. Okay, so it goes from -10 until -8, -2 until 0, and 2 until 5. Okay, minimum values. Okay, minimum values are basically the low points. So again, I will write that here. That is represented by our low points. Okay, so what I see here, like I told you earlier, minimum and maximum values, right? Maximum values represent our high points. Basically, what we're doing is we're looking at the y values. Okay, these here represent the y values. So let's go ahead and identify low point. I see a low point here and a low point here. Okay, so if we look at these y values, as you can see here, that means our minimum is going to be at -4 and 0. Okay, our maximum values, as you can see, that's going to be the high points. You're looking for something that looks like this: minimum like this, maximum like that. Okay, so what I see here is this on top here and this on top here. These are both examples of maximum values. So we just take the y value from this. Okay, so we have 6 and 10. 6 and 10. Okay, domain. Domain is represented by the x values that exist. So as you can see here, so the x values, it looks like it goes from -10 all the way until 5. That's where it stops at. That's our domain. So from -10 until 5. Now our range. Okay, range, we're going to look at this here. Low point here is -4, and it goes all the way up to this high point at 10. So let's go ahead and annotate that as well. So from -4 until until 10. So y values between -4 and 10. Okay. This part I'll help you guys again as well. Intervals where the function is positive. This says that we are above the x-axis. Okay, so again, if you're in period 1 or period 2, I do apologize. I made this same mistake for this example. So just please double check. So where the function is positive, so above the x-axis, I'm going to color code that in blue. Okay, so I'm going to color code that in blue. So what you can see here. So this is actually where I saw the inconsistency, where I made that mistake in class. Because technically, if I had written, if it included -5 and 0, and it also included 0 to 5, then you would say the function is positive from -5 to 5. But technically, 0 is neither negative or positive. That's where I realized, like, oh shoot, okay, that's where I made the mistake. So I do apologize. But those in the other classes, I was aware of this and I fixed it. Okay, so as you can see, the x values here, where it's positive, it's not going to include y equals 0, as you can see here. It's just going, if we look at the x values, it's going to be strictly be between -5 and 0. So I'm just going to go ahead and write this here. So between -5 and 0, and as well as this one. Okay, so it's going to be between 0 and 5. Okay, so from 0 and 5. Okay, intervals where the function is negative. Negative is going to be below the x-axis. Okay, below the x-axis, what I see here is this part here is below the x-axis. So it looks like it's going to be from -10 until -5. Okay, so that's how you would identify that. So -10 until -5. Okay, if you guys like using interval notation, you can also write this in interval notation, something like this. You could also write it like this. And the last one you can also write like this. So entirely up to you how you want to identify it. I'm not going to be super particular about how you do so. Okay, but that's generally how you would do that second example. Okay, and that is it for this video. Okay, so please let me know if you have any questions at all on anything, and I'll see you later. Okay, bye.